Today I cover the 5 biggest mistakes you may be making that are keeping you from losing the weight and keeping it off. Alright, you're a busy person, so let's just jump right into the first mistake you may be making, and that's majoring in the minor. What I mean by this is you spend all your time and energy focusing on the little things that make little to no difference while ignoring the big principles for fat loss. It seems like whenever people start trying to lose weight, they start asking questions like, what supplements should I be taking? How many meals per day should I eat? What are the exact foods I should eat? Or if I should eat organic? And while I'm not saying these things don't make any difference at all, they make up only a small portion of what actually matters. So what I want to do is give you a list of the things that are most important to least important. So number 1, above any and everything, is consistency and sustainability, which I'll talk about more in a bit. Number 2 is the amount of calories that you're eating. Number 3 is the macronutrient breakdown of those calories, with protein by far being the most important one. Number 4 is your micronutrient intake, or like your vitamins and minerals. Number 5 would be how you time your meals. And last, and certainly least, is supplements. So if you look at the list, most people start at the bottom and work their way up. Supplements are the least helpful thing, and this is coming from a Core Nutritionals ambassador. It doesn't mean that no supplements can be helpful, but they're not going to do anything for you if you're not eating in a calorie deficit. Notice how I didn't say anything about exact foods. This doesn't mean that food quality doesn't matter, but you can certainly eat healthy and not lose weight or even gain weight. The reason eating clean can work for people is because by doing this, they're eating foods that are more filling and therefore eat less total calories. And as far as organic foods goes, I don't really have any problem with that, and if you think they're healthier and like to eat them, then that's fine. Though research really hasn't supported at this point that they're any healthier. But hey, maybe we'll find out in the future they are. But what I can tell you is eating organic instead of non-organic isn't going to do anything for you in terms of actual fat loss. I'm not in any way saying I don't think health matters. It certainly does. But the thing that makes the biggest impact on health markers is going to be the amount of body fat you carry. And this means if you're eating in unsustainable ways and you can't keep the weight off, well, then that's not going to be very healthy. Which leads me perfectly into the second big mistake a lot of people make, and that's eating in unsustainable ways. It doesn't really matter what you do to lose the weight if you can't keep doing it when the weight is gone, and especially the way most people tend to diet, which is extreme restriction, starvation type plans. Once you are done with the diet, you just go back to your old habits. You typically tend to overeat even more on the foods that you've restricted, and since your metabolism has slowed down from the dieting, more on that later, you just gain the weight back fast, oftentimes even more than you lost to begin with. This is why I typically cringe when I hear people say they're gonna start the latest fad diet with a name. Keto seems to be all the craze right now, much in the way Atkins was about 20 years ago. And hey, if you love keto, if it's something that you can do for the rest of your life, I have no problem with that whatsoever. But I don't know a lot of people who basically aren't gonna eat carbs for the rest of their life. I mean, there's a reason why over the decades, there's always some sort of craze fad diet that gets all kinds of attention, and then pretty soon over time, it just eventually fades away. It's because few people can actually stick to them long term, and they aren't magic. They're just different ways of putting you in a calorie deficit. Most importantly, because of how restrictive they are, most of the time they just lead to a further poor relationship with food, which is a big problem for a lot of people. And the more you look at foods as either good or bad, the more you feel guilty and beat yourself up when you do have them. And when you do have them, you feel like you can never have them again, so you eat as much as you possibly can in one sitting, which often only triggers you to spiral out of control and feel terrible. You need to understand that food does not have morality, and it's important that however you diet is a part of a lifestyle you will utilize moving forward. So I think most people are better off learning how to include foods they enjoy into their diet than you are banning them completely. So make sure you don't make a complete overhaul of your entire life when you start trying to lose weight. Make sure you make slower, sustainable changes and be patient. This isn't a race, and trying to rush the process is the very thing that keeps you starting over all the time. And that actually perfectly leads me into the third mistake I wanted to talk about. While it's very similar to the last point, I do believe it deserves its own topic, and that's dropping your calories too fast right away and crashing your metabolism. Here's the thing that few people seem to understand about dieting. Your body will adapt to whatever you do, so nothing you do can possibly work forever. This is why you may start some sort of plan and see great results in the beginning, and then all of a sudden you notice over time it just stops working even though you haven't changed anything. This is because of the metabolic adaptations that occur, and sure, some of it is because you have just lost weight now. You're carrying around less mass and therefore you burn less calories just being you. But even bigger than that are the hormonal and metabolic adaptations that do occur. So if you go hard right away and eat like 1,000 or less calories, sure, you're gonna lose a lot of weight fast in the beginning, but not only will much of that not be fat, it'll be things like water weight and even worse, lean body mass. But eventually, those calories are gonna become your new maintenance. Now that your body is adapted to this, what are you supposed to do to get the results going again? You're already barely even eating and miserable. And this just goes right back to the last point. Because you can't see results now, you feel like there is no point and you might as well just go back to the way things were. So you go back to those old habits, probably eat even more than you did before because you feel so restricted. But now you're doing it with a metabolism that is much slower and the weight piles back on. So what you want to do is diet on as many calories as possible while seeing results, with results being somewhere between about 0.5 to 1% on average per week of your body weight, maybe up to 2% if you're obese. You also want to make sure you're giving your body a break from time to time to help minimize these adaptations. This is called a diet break, where you usually spend around a week or two right around maintenance, and this will not only help your hormones and metabolism and keep you in a better place to keep seeing results better long term, but it also gives you the mental break from the rigors of dieting. How exactly to diet break will be a topic for a future video, so if you're not currently subscribed, make sure you do so. But I typically recommend taking a break somewhere between every 4 and 8 weeks, but it can vary a lot based on a lot of different factors. If you keep doing these things, when your body makes these adaptations, you can keep making adjustments to keep the weight loss going. So while that quick weight loss in the beginning may be exciting and motivating, it's the very thing that keeps you stuck, and you'll end up losing less in the long run than if you take it with a slower approach. Yes, slow and steady really does win the race. Okay, the fourth big mistake you may be making is only utilizing cardio for exercise and not doing any strength training. When it comes to body composition, nothing changes your body the way strength training does. And even if you don't want a lot of muscle, one, you don't have to worry about this because it's not going to happen by accident. Especially for you women, not having nearly the testosterone that men have, it's much more difficult to build muscle. Two, the more muscle you have, the more calories your body burns just being itself, so this is the one thing you can do to actually increase your metabolism. And three, your body burns additional calories just trying to recover from a strength training session, and you can potentially get extra calorie burn for up to 2 days post-training. Whereas with more traditional forms of cardio, as soon as your heart rate returns back to normal, you stop burning calories. Not only that, but the body seems to adapt pretty quickly to cardio, so as you do more cardio, your body gets used to that and you burn less calories from the same amount of exercise, meaning you just have to keep doing more and more to see better results. So much like you want to eat as many calories as possible while seeing results, you want to do as little cardio as possible while seeing results so you can make more adjustments. Now, this isn't to say that cardio is bad and that you shouldn't do it. I just think the whole, well, I'm just gonna do cardio until I lose the weight and then focus on building muscle afterwards is a huge mistake. Instead, allow the strength training during the process to get you better results, but you do have to understand here, this is where weight and body fat are not always one and the same, because if you add muscle, that is not free weight. So you need to look at body composition and things like how your clothes are fitting, because especially if you're starting from scratch, you can see dramatic changes in body composition without a lot of weight loss. Regardless, using a combination of strength training and cardio is likely going to yield you the best results. Now, there is one caveat to this. Remember how I talked about with dieting, you need to make sure you do it in sustainable ways? The same thing goes for exercise. If you absolutely hate strength training and love cardio, I wouldn't tell you to focus all your attention on strength training, because you're gonna hate it and you're probably gonna give up. So you should focus more on what you enjoy to do and not just what's most optimal. But you do have to understand what that could mean for your long-term results. Because say, for instance, if you rely on marathons to lose weight, well, what happens when you stop doing marathons? Hello, weight regain. Now, the fifth big mistake a lot of people make isn't very commonly talked about, but in my opinion is extremely important, and that's letting your emotions dictate your actions. If there's one thing I can promise you about dieting is you will get emotional and it will eventually feel like it's not worth the effort. And hell, it's not even your fault. Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of hormonal changes that happen from dieting. The more weight you lose, the longer you do this, the more you'll start getting tired and cranky and extra hungry, especially if you don't take the diet breaks that I recommend. This is where you need to rely on your habits and rituals and not on your emotions, and do what you know you should do. Not listening to that tiny voice in your head and your feelings, which, don't get me wrong, your feelings are real because you're feeling them, but you have to understand every feeling is triggered by a thought, and most of the time, your thoughts aren't true. And if you're always giving in to your feelings and your emotions, you will never get where you want to be. So it's important you always accept reality for what it is, even if you don't like it, not to create unrealistic expectations, because this will only lead you to frustration and disappointment, and to make sure you go all in with what you're doing without going all or nothing. As you can tell, mindset is really important when it comes to weight loss. So make sure you check out this top video and I'll give you 8 tips to create the right mindset to lose the weight for good. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you at that other video.